So you've fallen in love with a home, but so have a few other people. I'm going to teach you how to get best prepared for a multiple offer situation and perhaps even win without being the highest bidder. Hi, I'm Nicole Cooper. My team and I get calls and emails from people just like you needing help moving in and around Austin, Texas, and we absolutely love it. So if you're looking to move today, tomorrow, or somewhere in between, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. We're always available to help you find the perfect home that matches your lifestyle. Now let's get started on this multiple offer situation strategy. First of all, in our strategy, we need to know how many other bidders there are. If we're just up against one other person, or if we're up against 5 to 10 other people, it does make a difference. When you're dealing in a multiple offer situation, it is best that the agent calls the listing agent to see what is going on, establish rapport, see if you can get any information from them. Are there just maybe threats of a couple of other offers coming in, or do they already have 5 offers and they've already set a deadline? Where are we in the process, and how much information can you glean from the listing agent? There will be different strategies depending on how many people have already put in an offer. If you're the first one in, which I love to be, you can give the sellers exactly what they're looking for and be totally upfront about it, like, hey, I'm trying to give you exactly what you've asked for. Let's get this deal under contract. If they get another offer after that and they come back to you and tell you that you're now in a multiple offer situation, you have the opportunity to improve from there, but at least you've already established that good rapport with the agent and given the seller what they've asked for. Now, if your client wants to move up and give them something more, that's something you have to determine at that point in time. My question to my clients is always, what number do you feel that you can offer that if you get the property, you will feel like, yes, we paid as much as we could for it and we're happy that we got it? Or if you don't get it, you feel like, you know what, we couldn't have spent any more money and felt comfortable. That was our walkaway number. If somebody offered more than that, then that's okay. Now, sometimes this is a hard number to figure out. However, you've got to find your perfect balance between, if we win it, we want it at that number. If we lose it, it's okay, we didn't want to spend any more than that. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of all the terms and everything else that matters besides just that offer price. Multiple offers and how to win. Today we're going to talk about it from the buyer's side of view. So it's not always only about the money. I mean, the money's important, don't get me wrong, but it's not always only about the money. The terms matter too. So it's really, really important for your agent to get to know the listing agent and to know what the seller wants. In some instances, it's more important about the whole picture than just about that bottom line. So what terms even matter? We're going to go through all the terms of the contract that are moving parts, whether it's buyer expense or seller expense, kind of talk through them, the expectations, and how to best prepare your strategy to win without maybe necessarily giving the most money out of all the people that are competing against you. So first of all, we're going to start with the finance terms. Of course, the contract price matters. I mean, everybody wants the most money. Every seller wants the most money, right? Let's be real. But let's talk about down payment versus loan amount. The more the down payment, the less loan amount, the stronger the offer is. So if you have a couple of offers that are close, but one has a much larger down payment, you may be inclined as a seller to choose that one because it's a safer, less risky loan product. Now, if you have a cash offer, that may blow the others out of the water as well because there's no hoops to jump through after you go under contract, no appraisal, no loan guidelines or anything like that. So oftentimes a cash offer will win. But when you have a large down payment and maybe you've waived the third-party financing addendum, you've got a fighting chance. Up next, earnest money. Typically, we're going to put 1% in there, 1% of purchase price in for earnest money in a regular situation. In a multiple offer strategy, we may sweeten that deal to be a little bit higher. The title policy, it is a buyer side or seller side expense. In a multiple offer situation, as the buyer, we may think about taking that expense on ourselves. For example, at $500,000 purchase price, it's around a $3,200 fee. Now that fee is mandated by the state of Texas, so the actual amount of that fee is non-negotiable, but who pays for it is negotiable. And in a multiple offer situation, as a buyer, you may strongly want to take that fee on. Seller concessions. We're not going to ask for any. When we're in a multiple offer situation, we're not going to ask for any seller concessions, as it will most likely be laughed off by the seller. The survey, it is maybe a non-expense. If there is an existing survey, we may be able to use the same one. However, if it's not usable and we need to get a new one, that is either a buyer expense or a seller expense. Typically speaking, they're around $500 to $800, depending on how quickly you need one. And that's for a regular lot, city lot. But if it has a little bit of acreage or a little more land, it could go upwards to $1,500 or more. So that's another expense that you will want to take on as the buyer. Now, the loan amount, or the loan type, I should say. Conventional loans are widely more accepted than FHA and VA because they have less rules and regulations. So if you can qualify for a conventional loan, if you're in a multiple offer situation, this will help you. Our next line item here is a lender letter. Of course, we're going to have approval before we even get going. So this is almost a non-issue here. This appraisal addendum. This is an appraisal waiver, if you will. So anytime you get a loan, you have to get an appraisal. And an appraisal is by a third-party entity, an appraisal company, hired by the bank, not by you. The bank hires them to make sure that the product or the house that they're lending on is worth what they're giving you the money for. So if a home is, let's just use $500,000 for example, it should appraise at $500,000 or more for the bank to give you the green light. Now, sometimes in these multiple offer situations, we're going over list price. So it gets a little bit more risky for those appraisals. So to make it look really good to the seller and to maybe be chosen quicker or better, you're going to lift that appraisal contingency altogether. You can waive it completely. So that means if the appraisal comes in low, you are responsible for paying that delta between the appraised value and the contract price. For example, we'll take that same $500,000 home. We offered $550,000. The appraisal only came in at $525,000. So the bank is only going to set all their loan adjustments from the $525,000. You would need the delta between the appraised value and the offer price of $25,000 cash to come out of your pocket to pay the difference. But we're going to know where the market sits. We're going to have an idea about where we're sitting, market versus appraised, or offer price versus market value, appraised value. So you'll have a general idea of how far you're sticking your neck out before you go. But if it's the one you love, I mean, hey, we might just want to waive that appraisal altogether. The next part in here are the dates and deadlines. Option period is very important in a multiple offer situation. Typically, in a regular deal, an option period is about a week long for just a couple hundred, maybe a few $100s. In these multiple offer situations, you want to express to the seller that you are absolutely serious and want to buy this house no matter what, unless something super crazy turns up in the inspection. So instead of 7 days, maybe we take it down to 3 days or 5 days. It just depends what day of the week it is and how quickly we can get an inspector in there. And then we want to take that money up to $1,000, maybe $2,000, depending on what our purchase price is. It's just a notice to the seller to say, hey, look, we plan on buying this house no matter what. And that's what the option period, high money, low days. Now, if you're feeling really risky, you can waive the option period altogether. I don't often recommend that to anyone, but that is another surefire way to show your seriousness to the seller. The third-party finance, I mentioned it a little bit already. There are ways with your lender to go ahead and get approval completely for yourself as the buyer, and we want to do that if possible anytime we can. Now, the property will still have to be appraised if you're getting a loan, but your portion as the buyer, you can get approval already, and then we don't have to have that third-party finance timeline. We waive that altogether, put days as 0, you're already approved, and that puts you somewhat on par or closer to being on par with a cash buyer. Closing date and possession and time. Well, we certainly want to already know what the seller wants here. Do they want it closed quickly as possible and get out of town? Do they need a lease back? Sometimes it's very, very important for the seller. Maybe they haven't even purchased their next house yet. Maybe they need the money from this house to purchase their next house, so they need a lease back of a month or two. Or maybe they just need a couple of weeks to get things packed up and ready to move out of town. You might consider giving them a free lease back in these situations because a lease back generally is going to cost less than a big incremental price on the offer price. The contingency. Basically, in a multiple offer situation, a contingency is most often not chosen. What is a contingency? It means as a buyer, you have to sell your house before you'll have the money to buy their house. And that just adds a whole nother layer of risk. So if the rest of the terms are close together, you're never going to get chosen as a contingency. Now, if you want to pay a huge amount more than the other buyer or the other offers, then they may consider the contingency. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. There are loan products to get you out of that contingency, and we can certainly talk about that offline anytime. Now, our last little considerations here are mostly small items that we just wanted the buyer to take on for, just to make things look good for the seller. We want them to be happy. We want them to cherry pick our offer out of all of the rest of them. Non-realty items, that's your refrigerator, washer, and dryer. You can ask the seller if they're planning on leaving them, then write them in the contract. But if they're not, don't let a refrigerator ruin an entire deal just because you wrote that into the non-realty items. Now, lastly, let's talk about this quality of agent and contract. It is really important that your agent establishes rapport, knows what they're doing, and fills out the cleanest, best contract that possibly exists. And I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was on representing a buyer and we found the perfect property, but so did a lot of other people. So there were 5 offers in on this property. My clients went as high as they could personally go. It happened to be matching the list price, not over list price. But we sweetened the deal with a lease back and every other term in the contract. And even though we finished in 3rd place, we were in the talks until the very, very end. The listing agent called me and told me that because our offer was well written and because we did everything that the seller asked for, the sellers considered us actually until the very last moment. We weren't in 1st place nor 2nd place, and we stayed in the running until the end because of the rest of the terms. So it can happen. You got to have the right strategy with the right agent.